Deepika.
Awesome. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for number 8 in a series of webinars called Freshly Certified. It's been a little while, and I'm sorry that it's taken so long, but we're back. Today's focus is going to be on color. So, color and design is a super powerful tool. It's a very, it's a large word to when applied to the design process. But I know that each one of these case studies that you'll see today has show how that they have applied that that property to their designs. I'll introduce myself. My name is Amanda Bolte. I am the Director of Creative and Brands at Motif Labs. I'm a serial freelancer, mentor, designer. I'm a certified RGD, and I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Certification Committee. And I also sit on the Board of Directors. I am also, most importantly, one of the certification presentation reviewers. So one of the many faces that you'll see when you go through the process of certification. If you have any questions in our presentation today, during our presentation today for any of the presenters, please use the chat in the control panel, and we'll hold all of our questions to the end so our panels are all able to present. But I know that they're eager for any of the questions that you might have about their work, about the process, or just any questions in general. So today's webinar is discussing the RGD certification experience, but mainly focused around case study development and presentation. Our panel of recently certified RGDs will break down their case studies, why they chose it, the process of putting it together, gathering the assets to results, and how they chose to present it. But first, before I get into the fun stuff, let's first talk about, for those who are interested in RGD, in the overall certification process, and I'll just do a general introduction. So RGD members are a community of over 4,000 like-minded professionals, including firm owners, freelancers, managers, educators, and students, with access to professional development, resources, and a vibrant exchange of information. Through RGD, Canadian designers exchange ideas, educate and inspire, set professional standards, and build a strong, supportive community dedicated to advocating for the value of design. For any information about the RGD and the resources available from members or the larger design community, please visit us at rgd.ca. But today we are talking about the certification. So there's 4 steps in becoming a registered graphic designer. It's broken down into 4 steps: filling out the application form, which is available on the website to see if you're eligible, taking an online test, a virtual online portfolio review, and then the presentations of the results from the RGD. If you want a little bit more information about how that really is, a little bit about the online test or about the virtual portfolio presentation outside of what I'm going to talk about today or the application, Heidi Very is going to be holding an RGD certification virtual information session. Wow, that was a lot of big words. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. and it's free to join. So if you want a little bit more granular information from the woman herself, feel free to join that. And I know that registration is open online right now on rgd.ca. So today we're talking about the most fun part, in my opinion, is the virtual online portfolio review. This is where designers get to be designers. So portfolios are presented virtually over a 30-minute session to 3 senior design practitioners serving as RGD reviewers, like me. Candidates present the same 6 pieces that are submitted as part of the RGD certification application. During the review, you are to speak to all the case studies within the 30 minutes while going into depth on one of those 6 pieces. If you want to learn more, again, about the details on certification, there's a fantastic free monthly webinar that I just talked about, and I'm reading a script, so I'm repeating myself. But you can also reach out directly to Heidi Very as well through our website, and she'll be able to answer any personal questions directly. So let's get to the fun stuff on why we're all here, is to talk to these 3 exceptionally talented human beings that we get to talk to today. And I'm going to start off with Chris Reyes. So Chris is in Edmonton. So I'm excited that we have actually 3 provinces, Alberta, Ontario, and BC are all represented today. So that's fantastic. Chris is an award-winning designer and art director with a passion for people and design. Chris's work experience in various agency environments that require leadership, creativity, and collaboration has taught him to solve problems using strategic, creative solutions to pursue innovation. He also believes that design plays a pivotal role on how our culture evolves, and how we use our skills as creatives has the capacity to drive organizations forward and change the world for the better. I love that. Chris, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thanks for the introduction, Amanda. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so like you mentioned, I'm going to go through one of my case studies that I did for the process of being certified. And the one I chose was the Today Center. And I'll focus a little bit more on kind of the color side of things.
Can you bring up your screen? Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, so I'll walk through it and how I presented it and how I positioned it, and then with a little bit more focus on some of the colors. So the Today Center is, they're a family violence help center is how they start. And so they're in a very specific industry that helps people. So the subject matter is very heavy. And so approaching this project took a lot of care, a lot of consideration into what the brand will evolve to. And so colors played a huge part of it. They really cared about their logo a lot. So a lot of research was done. And so this was their old palette. We broke it down with the team there, and I want to show kind of what it is and their hierarchy and their usage, just to kind of compare what it was to what it is now, but also just the heavy involvement that color used in this project specifically. So looking at it here, they used a lot of these kind of colors, kind of it looks autumny, kind of these oranges. And so one of the biggest things they told us was the heavy fatigue that they had when they were using these kinds of colors. And then once you kind of put them together like this, to them, it just started to get a little bit more drab and getting pushed to the back, and using a lot of stock photos for this line of work. And so when they approached us, we took all of that kind of research and all the insights that we got from them to develop something that was kind of on the other spectrum. And so we brought them to this logo design. And as soon as they saw it, and even this colors, it felt kind of a calmness to them. They felt super happy, super relieved, just seeing these kind of colors together. And so it was kind of on the opposite end. So instead of something that was warm, a little bit muted, we kind of went to something brighter, but also calmer at the same time, and happy and a little bit more inspiring too. And so we developed this color palette that took quite a process to get there. We went through a couple of rounds actually to define the final colors, and these were the ones that we chose. And as soon as we put them together like this, they were able to see a little bit more potential of it. It was kind of a change, but we still kept some of the warmer kind of tones here and treated them more as a kind of a secondary palette. And so what we also did was give a suggested hierarchy. So the hierarchy isn't something that I push a lot on when we pitch to brands or something, because we want to give the flexibility too, but we also want to give just enough structure to give them kind of a jumping off point to kind of keep creating collateral for themselves. So got to the logo, created the one color version as well. Because when you saw in the older collateral, they were very stuck to their full color logo, and putting white boxes around it, it was getting very limited. So I wanted to be able to show kind of what even color can do in this case. So we developed a bunch of pieces that started to come together in this sort of way. So you can see in this shot, the kind of the collateral pieces, they wanted to keep things still kind of discreet because of the heavy subject matter. So covers didn't really say what it was. So we used big blocks of colors in this example. And just keeping even the logo itself was just simple enough that it communicated what it was, but without saying too much, along with their name. And so we wanted to keep things kind of positive and calm and inspiring all at the same time. And which translated to print. So even cards like this were they were done very specific for certain case uses. So this one stayed very clean, very professional, and you can see the color balance here too. Just keeping these kinds of blues in mind was just crucial to their audience and to make sure it communicated well. And then when we jumped into the rest of the brand, we wanted to do something that was a little bit different. So we wanted to kind of stay away from stock photos, and we wanted to do something with color that balanced really well, but also communicated what they did in a way that didn't need to have photos of the typical domestic violence kinds of photos. We really wanted to position this brand to help their clients feel more empowered than victimized. And so the color usage was one of the big things for that. And so then we developed an illustration, a library. So one of their big things was inclusivity. And the reason for that is that they're open to everyone. And that's one of their biggest focuses. So a way of doing that, one of the solutions we arrived to was, what if inclusivity meant different style of illustration? So at the agency I was at, 2 other designers contributed their illustration styles to develop this library, while using the same color palette to keep it all cohesive. And the whole brand started to evolve this way. You can see conceptual ideas, more abstract or even more literal things. So this was able to adapt to so many different applications, and it was one of the biggest roles that color had in this case study. And so even laying it out this way, we started to create a whole set of them, and the clients were super happy to see this too. It just gave them more flexibility. They felt kind of the happy part of it again, and how much they actually care for this kind of work. Just even seeing this kind of color balance was super important to them. So then, using these kinds of assets, when we jumped into the website portion, same thing. We took the idea of not trying to stay away from stock photos. Again, what can we do that is just colors and type, and making the whole brand kind of the platform of it being, it's these colors and these illustrations that kind of show up what we do without actually showing people, because that's also something that that we took into consideration. So privacy was a big thing, and and the copy too. So then doing the help starts today was the positioning line that we did for it too. That again gave a lot more flexibility. So then after that, we did social media assets, and you can start to see the color start to expand even more. And again, using a little bit of that suggested color hierarchy, we weren't completely stuck to it, but you can start to see more of the blues coming into this, and it was such a sense of happiness too, and just being able to see the outcome of it was super helpful, and they responded really well to it. And giving them these kinds of assets also empowered them to kind of start creating it a little bit on their own as well. And so we gave them a starting point, a brand guide that included all of it. And you can see it here when we laid it out on the website, how it works. In spots, instead of having photos, coming up with ideas that how can we illustrate this in a way that's either more conceptual, a bit more abstract, and coming up with a balance that makes more sense, but also keeping in mind their clientele when they arrive to the site. What is it that you want them to feel when they go through this? So these kinds of colors and tones really helped kind of drive that and make kind of help guide their clients into feeling a little bit more safe and secure at this center. So after that, we did some messaging and some branded posters. And so this was also such a crucial part of the case study, being able to show now how this works with different styles of illustrations and copy in a way that's kind of just simple enough but clever enough to show what is it that they do, but keeping it discreet. So lines like, yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and just using these 3 colors made such an impact. And I think most of the posters didn't use even more than 3 colors. But you can start to see how much color had to do in this case study alone, because there were no photos, there weren't any real people in it. So we needed another device that we can use to position them in a way that kind of brings them again to the forefront, to remind people who they were, what they do, and how they help their clients. And so at the end, they actually ended up having a big kind of launch party because they were just ecstatic for this. So they reprinted so many things, got new signage. They took the brand, really embraced it. And that poster I showed at the beginning of their old logo, there was, we even redid that right here to kind of explain what it is that they do, and to still position them in a way that they're at the forefront there. This is the line of work that they do, and that they're there to help and really kind of reinforce the brand messaging. And I think there's a bit of a color mention in there as well. And you can see the hierarchy of it working. So they really took the blues and kind of put that at the front, because it's such a common kind of a happier color in this case. And they really embraced it. And so that was the way I kind of positioned this, and then laid out this case study to kind of show this kind of story, and how much color really, really was one of the most crucial pieces of this case study. And that's the Today Center rebrand.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. I really enjoyed this when you presented it, because I believe that I was one of your reviewers, which is super fun when things come full circle, which they tend to be doing a lot for me lately. I really liked, so just to be clear for everybody too, that you don't have to have a theme with your whole portfolio presentation. I just find with the topic of these webinars that it kind of gives a kind of a tie into it. I found that with this case study in itself too, it really showed the full gamut of what color in this case did for the rebrand. I think that your use of color it invokes an emotion to a certain point where, you're showing out, what design can do and what color can do, and its inclusivity, especially around domestic violence, how it affects everybody. Like, you have blue people in there at some point, right? Like, yeah, anybody could be a blue person at that point. Race, creed, or gender doesn't matter at that point. So I think that's really powerful in itself. Question for you: did you learn anything, like when you were put through this process of creating this case study for your submission? Did you learn anything along the way, whether during this, or creating your case study, or doing the certification process in general?
I think one of the biggest things I learned is just, I think, involving kind of the way I put case studies together. It's always kind of a walkthrough. You kind of showed it more as a journey down to your kind of little decisions. If I was able to show that kind of in like individual slides, it helped me evolve the way I guess kind of put presentations together. So I think that was one of the things that I did learn through this process. And the nice thing about it is that I already had all these kind of pieces together. It was more of just kind of looking at it again and seeing like, okay, I think I can lay this out a little bit better for this presentation. So it wasn't even an excess amount of work or anything like that. It was using the assets I already had, but I guess kind of being able to refine it just a little bit.
Yeah, I think you did a great job of like telling the story, right from the old logo, the why, and then how it ended. So that was fantastic. Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And as of time, we will go on to our next presenter. I'm going to just pull up my little right up here. So Claudia Yen, I hope I'm saying your name right. I'm so sorry I didn't ask beforehand. It's from Toronto. Claudia is an award-winning art director and multidisciplinary designer. Claudia started as a brand-focused designer in Hong Kong, and then as an environmental designer for SpongeBob SquarePants and Dora the Explorer. You are now my spirit animal, just saying. Today, she is focusing visual identity and product design. Her clients include Toronto Public Library, York University, McDonald's, Jeep, and T-Mobile. Claudia is currently an art director and designer embedded at Apple via Critical Mass. Claudia, I cannot wait to hear you talk about your case study.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Amanda. I'm just going to share my screen now. Let me know when everyone can see that and we're good.
You're good to go.
Okay, fantastic. Once again, thank you. My name is Claudia. Chris, amazing work. Can't believe I have to follow you. But hi, everyone. So my name is Claudia. I'm an art director and designer in Toronto. And so I took my RGD test in January this year, and I did my portfolio presentation in April. And then I was shortly certified after. And so the case study I'm going to go through today is the brand work for Toronto Public Library Kids. So how do you build a kids brand for a library system across hundreds of branches? So we know that libraries are important to cities and communities, and the goals were that their previous brand, Kids Stop, was in need of a modern refresh. It needed to be a unified system that works across the city. And at the end, there was a handoff to librarians to implement the new brand in their own branches. So the first challenge was that every library location is different. Some are new, some are old, or some have better funding than others. And we started by visiting branches across the city to see what was working, what needed to improve, and what was feasible across such diverse places. We also did focus groups with parents and children, letting them take us through the library with them to find out what they liked and what they didn't like. And we also did it in a really kid-friendly way with markers, large flipboard paper, or on the floor. And we asked questions like, who do you go to the library with? What do you do there? What do you like? Or what do you wish the library could have? Or how do you find a book? So kids need to know that the library was also their place and not just for adults, because the goal of the library is to help kids foster a lifelong love of learning, and that the library is a place to let kids explore and learn on their own. So it shouldn't be a place where kids were stopped. So we started out just by playing with type, trying out different typography, like this angular one at the top based on building blocks. And then I did some research looking into legibility and typefaces for kids. And some of the things I learned were that children prefer sans serif because it reminds them of school, and that they find all caps really difficult to read. We also found out that kids like larger X heights and round open fonts with generous letter spacing were easier to read. So the first angular block one didn't work out. In the end, we chose a warm, friendly, rounded sans serif with consistent stroke width, and we used it in sentence case, so it was made for legibility. And then looking at the original Kids Stop logo and taking a simple shape that any kid can recognize, the circle dot. And then thinking about the red light, green light game you would play as a kid, and taking that green dot, it's literally a green light. So if the library was a place for kids not to be stopped, green is for go. And then bringing that simple green dot to life and turning it into something else. We started drawing on top of it, and all of a sudden it had a personality and a voice, and it was no longer just a dot. And then building that out into an icon library and drawing into different objects and subjects, like science ones, like beakers and icons, and adding in a lot of Toronto flavor, like a Toronto Blue Jays hat one. Or we can use these circles and make them into Lego blocks for after school posters. So it's a way to really bring the material to life and was playfully open-ended. It was simple, but also allowed for a lot of flexibility to be adapted in different ways. And so the color palette included like lots of shades of greens and teals. Since that was our primary case, that green was for go. And we avoided harsh reds since red was for stop. And so we applied it to different aspects for the children's experience, a lot of fun swag items, like really cute circle pins that could be handed out. And then also bringing it to life in physical spaces, putting it on window decals or signs on shelving, and really integrating it with the space. So the second challenge we heard was that when we were speaking with the library staff, their main concern was how would they implement this brand themselves? A lot of librarians had little design skills or lack of design software. When librarians were trying to make a poster for the library event, there was previously no guideline on how to make one, and they usually use PowerPoint and clip art. We also know that each library has a different budget. Some had more money to print custom pieces, while some just had access to a simple printer. I also didn't have enough capacity to speak with every librarian or every library to do brand training with them. So we didn't want them to have to rely on a single copy of a printed brand guideline or a PDF. So we created an internal online brand portal. So it's accessible anywhere with a computer, and every librarian can get a login. It was a prescriptive and comprehensive guide on how to use the brand elements, and it was also a place to download all the brand assets. So we didn't want people asking, where can I find that logo file anymore? And then we also created a lot of templates in both vector and PowerPoint in common paper sizes. So for librarians who are extremely not comfortable, they can download the PowerPoint template off the brand portal, and it's more plug and play. And then for smaller libraries with less resources, we took a look at the quick wins that we can apply their new brand with just a regular printer. So for example, these shelving talkers, again, in templates where they can easily customize these items for their library. So we wanted the journey for the librarian to be ownership of the brand at the end. We wanted to empower them and really have them own this brand. And so we tried to do this by decreasing the barriers. So we created a flexible and open branding system. We gave libraries less funding, ways to incorporate the brand, and we created templates and platforms that they preferred. And we also created a central place for them to find all their visual assets. So librarians are the ones who are now carrying this torch, and we are seeing them implement this. The first year was definitely a learning curve, but we started to see them use the templates more and more. And this project was done a couple of years ago, and by today we feel that the library has really owned it and is now comfortable with working for it. We've been seeing that the newer libraries have been incorporating the brand into their physical spaces. And I've also been seeing the library making their own icons. Like I see a Harry Potter one, and recently one with a face mask. So these posters are getting better. And I've also seen librarians making like coloring sheets with these dots. And so I chose the library project to present because it was a project where I was involved from beginning to end. And I structured it as like there was obviously very specific challenges, and we presented the solutions. It was also like a really well documented and deep process. There was a research phase, a design phase, and an implementation phase. It was also just one of my favorite projects to date because it's just super playful. And in the end, this project was awarded 2 design awards, an applied arts one for branding and a red dot communication one. Yeah, so thank you. That is my case study.
That is amazing, Claudia. I think it's kind of ironic that you were awarded a red dot for a green dot.
I didn't even think of that.
I don't know if anybody else finds the irony in that, because I was like, we want to avoid the red dots, but we got a red dot anyway. That was fantastic. I think that, you really, and just to stay on my theme today, it's like you really used color as something accessible and something that's really easy to incorporate in every day. I really love like the color demarcations on even just something as simple as like the bookshelf, like finding different topics. Like that's really smart, and not even using a traditional like really overpowering color palette. Like you've muted them down just a little bit so they feel like they're something personal to the brand as well too. I really appreciate that. I love the Harry Potter thing too as well. Like, when you start to see a brand kind of, get its own legs and its own personality, and you kind of get like a little bit of pride, especially when it's done well. You get pride as a designer. You're like, I started that. Like, that's so much fun. You had a very thorough, exceptional case study there. Not everybody might not have that. What advice would you give, do you think, to others that may be going through this process?
Yeah, I definitely, when I was putting this presentation together, I definitely used it as like a double tasking one. I also had, like Chris, I had a lot of these assets ready to go, and I presented this case study like a couple of times as well to like employers or just like internally. So I had a lot of it already done. So I feel like everyone probably has a lot of it already done as well. And it's just kind of like repurposing it and really telling that story. I really wanted to tell, like, again, the whole process. Like I wanted people to know the process, and yeah, just again, sorry, just telling that story.
No, No, you hit the nail on the head. Actually, kind of what I wanted to touch on was like, we all have like a deck like this in our repertoire that we've had, right? It's like, and just did you have to modify it a lot for the present for this purpose, or was it pretty much how you had it?
I think the one thing was definitely trying to time it out. I actually have a much longer version of this. So yeah, it was fitting everything in that 30 minutes, having, again, like I timed all my case studies out. I practiced a couple of times, timed it on my phone to make sure I hit that 30-minute mark.
That's awesome. That's really good information. Awesome. Thank you so much, Claudia. Fantastic. I think, and on our last one, and we're going to have a little bit of time at the end just to chat in general with these guys. But Parker McLean is an RTD from Vancouver. So it is 11 o'clock there sometime, something like that. Yeah. I'm working a lot with BC people, so I'm getting this now. Starting to like, yeah, I'm starting to not have any sense of time. I think that's the problem. You are a tender heart. So Parker is a tender-hearted and confident, Parker is a queer creative director based in Vancouver, BC, with a background in linguistics. Parker leads his team at Hark Creative through impact-focused branding, strategy, and communications. Communications product will eat with equal parts heart, head, and humor. That sounds like my day. Parker, I'm really looking forward to your presentation. I've heard lots about it.
Oh, thank you so much, Amanda. I'm so delighted to be here. And thanks to the earlier two presenters for their amazing work. It is humbling to go after such strong acts, but I'll do my very best. So as you mentioned, Amanda, my name is Parker McLean. I am a very recent RGD. I got certified over the course of the summer. It had been a New Year's resolution for, I think, 3 years running, and finally got around to doing it. I hope that I can share through this presentation so much of the value that I found through that process. So let's start just by talking a little bit more about who I am and sort of how I approach my work. As mentioned, I'm over here in Vancouver. Traditionally, this area wasn't a settler area. Instead, it was held by the 3 First Nations in the area, the Musqueam, the Tsleil-Waututh, and the Squamish First Nations. Me and my team work on these lands, and we're grateful to be doing our work here. I run my business with my beautiful husband, Jaron. We run a team of 5, but our partnership is really, really critical and central to the work that we do, because we really work to bring love and attention to each client that we work with. Our creative agency is titled Hark. Most people know the word hark from the Christmas carol, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. It's a fairly old verb. People don't really use this anymore, but hark really means to listen attentively. And that's so much of what we do for our clients. We work in all sorts of different spaces. We branded a downtown church focused on supporting queer people last year. We have worked with the Wavefront Center for Communication Accessibility to try to breathe some vitality into a fairly old value proposition of hearing. We are delighted to be partnered with YVR, and we help them with all sorts of brand storytelling. That's Vancouver International Airport, bringing their work to the community and really showing the ways that their community is part of their work. Recently branded for a theater center, but you know, all of that to say that the way that we work is really tightly focused on making space for the clients to be heard by their audiences. Something you might not know about me is that I was born with a cleft palate, which meant that I spent the first 10, 11 years of my life with a really significant speech difference. By nature of survival and trying to escape schoolyard bullying, I spent a lot of time focused on studying the ways that other people communicated, so that I might be able to replicate that and be more clearly understood. The work that I do today as a graphic designer and creative director feels very much the same, trying to understand the ways that communities talk about themselves, articulating that through some sort of brand or visual identity, and then deploying that out into the world. The case study I'm going to be talking to you about today is for Rainbow Refugee. I'm not sure how many people in the room are aware of the problem space around persecution against same-sex people around the world, but 71 countries around the world still criminalize private, consensual same-sex sexual activity between adults. That's 71, to say that number again. And at least 6 of those countries implement the death penalty for the folks who are caught and convicted, which just sends goosebumps down my spine every time I say it. It's so important. As Chris was mentioning earlier, like when clients come to you with heavy subject matter, it can be so tempting to sort of just like get through the research and then get to the creative part. But every time that we're engaging a project with really sensitive material, I think that it's important that we stop and pause and really think about what we're doing aside from just the design. What are we accomplishing through design? So Rainbow Refugee was founded a couple of decades ago to help bring or support people in coming to Canada and building communities of belonging around them once they're here. So they don't just show up and have to pay all their bills and make all their friendships and find all their apartments on their own. The organization is really tightly focused on building communities of support around folks who are experiencing resettlement. Over the years, they built their own brand. Here's the best resolution logo that I could find of their previous logo. The way that they fundraise is centered on this idea of circles of hope. So convening community around the person who is applying for resettlement to Canada. And so the logo was originally drawn to have this sort of rainbow spiral thing happening as a suggestion of wrapping around the people once they're here. And as you might be able to tell by the social grid over on the right, they had a really hard time bringing this brand to life in various applications here, namely social. The ways that this logo works in other contexts are not great when things are fading down into transparent. It's really hard to layer that onto anything else. And they hadn't really been equipped with a kit of parts with this brand. In fact, nobody in the organization knew who had designed it initially. So they had this remnant logo that they didn't really know how to use. And then a value proposition with respect to their brand storytelling that's centered on anonymity. They needed to be able to ensure that the people who were applying for resettlement to Canada wouldn't be outed to their families of origin. That can be the difference between life and death for a lot of the folks who are experiencing resettlement. And so their social grid was full of situations like this, like a really happy group of people over here in Canada, and then the most important part of the story being completely erased with a sticker or an emoji. The ways that they were doing this were really all over the shop. But the central thread was they were really struggling to find ways of communicating the assuredness of client or case individual privacy without outing them publicly. So the central brand proposition for us was like, how might we build a brand that evokes human resilience without showing the humans? Chris talked about trying to do this earlier, like with respect to family violence, how do you talk about that without using stock images of people in violent situations? How do we humanize stories without showing the humans involved? This seemed completely impossible, honestly. I really felt in my heart and my ego that anonymity was against us at the beginning of this project, but my super graceful team and the client, we were all able to sort of lean into this problem space. And instead of thinking about anonymity being against us, reframe that as anonymity being with us. If we could somehow paint with anonymity in the brand, what would that mean for the storytelling downstream? Back in 2021, when we were working on this work, I guess that's just a year and a half ago, there were quite a few illustration libraries that were getting used over and over again and receiving some bad criticism from the design community for their genericness. We looked around at quite a few of these libraries to try to find an illustration approach to depict humans that was original, that was doing the right thing, and that didn't feel like it was part of the pack. But then I started thinking, like, what if we used the genericness of these illustrations as the way to storytell the anonymity that we were really trying to bring to the fore? This latest topmost library that I've got on screen, Humans, really caught our eye because of the opportunities that it had for folks to be able to generate their own avatars. And so with the participation of the Rainbow Refugee team, we built out a whole cast of characters that had the body types and the access requirements and the honestly queer haircuts that define and really characterize the folks that are helped by this organization without identifying them personally. From here, it became clear that we were going to have to think about incorporating some color in order to build the value proposition here. As much as it's really solid and serious subject matter, the payoff of this brand story, the end point, is a community of belonging for these folks. And so it became part of the brand story that they would always be wearing the sort of colors of Rainbow Refugee, but still remaining themselves. Beyond that, addressing this logo was quite challenging. It was initially drawn to represent the pride flag that was designed by Gilbert Baker back in 1978. But in 2018, Daniel Quasar designed the Progress flag, which incorporates the trans stripes designed by Monica Helms back in 1999 to include trans folks, as well as the black and brown stripes, which are meant to represent communities of color and members of our community lost or living with HIV/AIDS. And so weaving additional stripes around this logo that had a lot of buy-in, but a really difficult thing to use, was just part of the work. So we added those stripes. We retoned the rainbow for harmony. As a designer, it can be really challenging to think about just slapping on another couple stripes onto any logo. So we had to find a way to rebalance that rainbow in a different way so that these additional stripes would make visual sense. From there, we established a type hierarchy that was a little bit more focused on the rainbow part and less focused on the refugee part, as much as refugee was the sort of meat and potatoes of what this organization does. The rainbow was the distinguishing feature. And so we wanted to make sure that that was clear to first-time audiences from the get-go. And then the last adjustment here was moving away from the sort of federal government maple leaf, which can be triggering for lots of folks experiencing resettlement to Canada, and instead using a more stylized maple leaf that would be recognizable as a symbol for this place that we live, without feeling like it was coming from the government's mouthpiece. So once we had the logo in place and this cast of characters, we got to start painting. We got to start applying this in all sorts of different areas. And this is where the magic really happened. We built out a whole set of handbills. So much of the fundraising for this organization happens at in-person events or at the parade or whatever the case may be. And so building print pieces that were immediately visually evocative was key. We used color gradients, a la Spotify in the background in each of these pieces to communicate a part of the rainbow spectrum without having to show the whole thing every time. Bringing these humans in to humanize the value proposition, and then wrapping the front of this postcard with that circle of hope motif that I mentioned earlier, so that everything feels like it's part of the same brand story, but we're really just interpolating from the brand that existed before. From there, we designed out a whole set of stickers using passages that were really closely held by the organization. My Liberation is Bound Up in Yours is a Leila Armstrong passage. She's an Australian Indigenous artist and speaker. And this has really become a rally cry for so many organizations that are trying to move through queer progress in an intersectional way. And so daylighting that and really making sure that the folks that were part of the resettlement community were helping define what the flags would be that we flew for this brand was really critical. At the end of the day, I'm just a white cis guy over here, and making space within my work to invite other people to inform the approach I take is a really important part of how I personally approach this kind of sensitive subject matter. Next, this sticker over here, I really wanted to find a way to communicate the decentering of white saviorism in the value proposition. So bring and rescue and save are words that really put the person applying for resettlement off to the side and center on the person doing the fundraising or whatever. And so the overarching brand retunement that we made for Rainbow Refugee was to stop using words like this and really just use the word support every time. The graphic approach here is intentionally sort of lean, just using a Sharpie, a quick iPhone scan, and an image trace so that team members at the Rainbow Refugee side of things could be producing these sorts of assets without having to hire us and our team every time. When Claudia was talking about studying feasibility within the Toronto Public Library, it's like, you can have all the creative ideas in the world, but unless the end client is able to use the thing and use the kit of parts that we put together, it doesn't really do much. And so taking an approach that makes space for other people to populate the brand palette instead of leaving them out is really key. The way this shows up on social is, again, like really dynamic, using color to do the heavy hitting. But again, really using a light graphic approach. So you could find a piece of clip art, slap a headline on top of it, put a colored background, and have a post for, in this case, Black History Month. But this could be anything, just using different graphic assets. Beyond that, some high-level positioning that we produce for them. And then lastly, everybody loves a wild poster mock-up. We always come alive to imagine what it would feel like to see the story out in the wild. The things that I hope that you took away from this case study is that when you're producing your RGD portfolio, it can be tempting to erase the work that it took to get to the case study. But my invitation to you is to lean into telling that story. That's really what makes your case study different than everybody else's. If somebody just wanted to see a static portfolio, they'd go to your Dribbble. But the RGD certification process gives you an opportunity to start talking to designers about your work. As professional practicing designers, we're always having to couch our visual decision-making for the person who isn't a designer on the other side of a client table. And through RGD certification, you get to change the game and talk to other designers. And there's an opportunity to get really nerdy about that. So take it. The second takeaway is be open about your challenges. There were lots of moments along this story that I had a big fat I don't know plastered across my brain and spent a lot of days shampooing my hair and agonizing, like, how are we going to make this happen? But the challenges are the things that I personally learned from and that other designers can learn from by hearing about your work. So really don't be shy about telling people about how things got in the way as you were going. And thirdly, let yourself be seen. I started my RGD presentation with the same intro I gave you today about the way that I spend my early life and how that's factored into my professional life. And that is the lens through which I try to talk about all of my work, because I am just me. I'm a whole person and I have all of these experiences. I have all of these wishes and dreams and traumas and nightmares and experiences, and all of the things that went along the road are what made all of the work that I put in my RGD portfolio and my broader portfolio possible. And so making space for that to be part of the equation was really, really important to me. Here are all of the sources from today. Please take a moment to screenshot this and follow up on any of these. If you're curious, I really recommend taking some deeper dives into some of these areas. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm so honored to be here today and really thrilled to have this opportunity to share with you what I've learned and how I'm continuing to learn along the way.
I'm speechless. I'm speechless. Parker, that was unbelievably beautiful. I have to say that you refuel me. I think everybody here, it's like even just like being able to nerd out and talk about design and see design and get inspired by other designers. Like it like literally is like the purpose of my being. Like I love it. That was absolutely gorgeous. I really think that through all of them is really showing the power of what color in design has done. And I think that, you know, I never thought it was going to have such a powerful message. I was hoping it would, but like literally that just kind of like, that was a mic drop on like what color could do. You really touched on talking on the certification part of it. You really did talk a lot brought in a lot of really good points. It's like you're talking to designers about design and you're allowed to get nerdy and you're allowed to get technical. And you know, if you get something over your head, it's almost like props, like what the heck was that person talking about? You know, that I think that's a really important kind of takeaway. You're going to take my job. You're going to do this hosting next time. I think so. I think that was fantastic. I have noticed, so there's a bunch of resources available for those who are going through the certification process, especially if you're a provisional or affiliate, is mentorship as well too. And I noticed that you are a mentor, applied to be a mentor. So coming up shortly, if you're a provisional or affiliate, you can apply to be Parker's mentee, which I kind of want to apply for. So that's good.
Do it.
Do it. No, it's good. I think that that's great. Other than like, you're so fresh into this, like you're so like brand new RGD. What are you looking forward to doing most? Like,
well, thank you for all of that. I'm not so fresh. It's my Zoom auto tune is makes me look a little younger. You know, for me, when I was doing my certification process, it sounds really scary, right? You like sit in front of this panel of designers and like just talk.
Yeah.
But what they don't really storytell in advance of the certification process, and what I was surprised by, was the opportunity to answer some questions at the end and really have what felt like an open conversation instead of a grilling. And one of my panelists asked me, like, what is this RGD certification for? Like, why are you doing this? And for me, as a self-taught designer, my background is in linguistics. And since graduating university, I've really taught myself design. For me, I felt like an imposter at so many steps along the way, and having the opportunity to sit down with my peers and express that, and to talk about how by getting certified, I would be able to at least hold my head a little higher, that I've been able to review my work with my peers and get some honest feedback and either walk through that door of RGD certification or not. But I think putting skin in the game is really important. And so I hope that with certification, I get to just keep trying and keep pushing myself. I hope that I'm never stop learning. And I really am already feeling so revitalized by the community of RGD members.
That's amazing.
And teaching me what I don't know. You know, Chris and Claudia brought up so many amazing points, and it's situations like this that have really already brought amazing value and insight into my own professional practice. So
100%.
I hope I just get to keep going.
No, that's good. Actually, Abdul, I don't know if you can bring Chris and Claudia back on cameras. We'll just have an open, because I'm all about the open communication and conversation, because that's kind of what this is as well, right? So this is going to be an open question to like the three of you. If you were like, we have a bunch of attendees today, and I know that this is going to live as well on YouTube, and this has been a really, really good, like these webinars have actually I've had people go through the certification process and says, hey, I saw the freshly certified webinar. It really made me help me go through the process. So people are looking at these webinars and saying, hey, you know, I'm looking at going through the process. My dog wants to go through the process, if you can hear her barking as well too. What would you say to those candidates that are on the fence, that haven't gone through it yet? What would you say to them? I'll take volunteers on who wants to go first. Chris, you haven't talked in a while.
Sure. I would say, I think Parker said it too. It's not as scary as it seems. I got the incentive to because of other programs you could apply to. So that, like the Ultra Bold Awards was a good incentive. You already have a lot of the assets. It really is just a bit of refinement. And the other thing is, you kind of learn, you learn a lot of good things about it. So even going through the ethics or the business side of things was super interesting. And it wasn't a lot to read either. Like it was actually not, it wasn't hard, but it really kind of empowers you to kind of like be like, okay, this is like serious work. I can do this, you know? So that's what I would say. I would say, do it, look into it, and just, yeah, see what happens.
Oh, sorry, Claudia?
Yeah, I think it's gonna sound super cheesy, but it's just like I've also been putting it off for so many years. And like Chris said, I also had incentive from Ultra Bold to do it. So it's just like actually like starting it. And it doesn't have to be Ultra Bold too. Like I know a lot of employers also offer like sponsor the cost for like development, professional development. So I think like there are other incentives or ways to do it.
Yeah, and like touching on both of those points, like the incentive really kicked me in the pants too. Like earlier this year, they were like, you can go to Design Thinkers for free. And I was raised coupon cutting, and I'm like, free's the best price there is. Like I have to do that. And then it was like this mountain of work, but it still felt like a really good deal. So to the same point, just like do it, but also be gentle with yourself. Like I took a few years of setting this as my resolution before I actually did it. And I'm proud of that. I think that I would have had a very different presentation if I'd done it before I was ready. So listen to your heart, and when the incentive feels right, do it.
Yeah, I think that Chris, it's a good point. It's like it's not as scary. It's not as scary. Like the whole process isn't as scary as intimidating as it kind of may seem. I think it's a good point to say is like at RGD, like we want to see you guys succeed. We want to see people pass. We want to, so like it's not It's not like an inclusive club. Like, I think it's harder probably to get a golf membership. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I think that, we want to see through the process. I know that I see a lot of resumes that come across my desk on a daily basis, and I look at them and I'm like, literally, you're already there. You know what I mean? All you had to do is just to fill out a couple of extra forms, or, flush out like a case study or two, and like, you're like 90% of the way there. So I think that that's really important as well too. I think that was a really good segue, Parker, and we're almost at time, and I don't really have any questions because I think that you guys are rock stars and like answered a ton of questions. Is that a segue? So I felt really revitalized by just like listening to you guys talk. Like, the power of the design that you guys presented today was incredible. Design Thinkers. So Design Thinkers is coming up October 27th and 28th. It's in person in Toronto this year. And if you're there and you're watching, come find me and say hi, because I will be there. It's also a virtual ticket, so you don't have to actually be in person if you don't want to, or if you can't because you're in Vancouver. I'll be in Vancouver, Parker, so come to the Vancouver one. So, well, that'll happen as well too. But I think that that's a really good thing. Also, on the certification committee, I can say that we're working on a mentor, a mentorship, a special mentorship for certification as well too. So getting you paired with somebody who wants to go through the process, but you need a mentor to help that. So that's as well. And we're working on doing a certification sprint. So, one weekend, it's a power study group where everybody kind of gets together and really learns all the material. So you're not alone. So you can kind of do it as part of a team. So we're really working on these abilities to help people through the process and really help you. So if you guys want any more information about that, you can reach out to myself or reach out to Heidi Berry, and I'm really easy to find online. And we'll answer any questions that you have. Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. This has been a blast.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Talk soon, guys.
Bye.